is a story about an extraordinary team success, and it's a story about an extraordinary individual success. There really wasn't anything special about us, about any one individual, but what was extraordinary was the potential that was within us. We go out of our way to make it more difficult for ourselves. I know that sounds a bit odd, and it's all about style. And the idea is that when a climb or a mountain involves a higher degree or level of commitment, it also inspires a higher level of performance. And that's what we're after. At least that's what some of us are after. And each time I went out to do a new climb, to take on a new challenge, I discovered new strengths. We are more than we know, and once we realize this, may we never settle for less. To climb Mount Everest by a route that had never been climbed before in its entirety, a difficult route, and to do it in what we considered as mountaineers, as climbers, in good style. What does that mean? It means to climb the mountain with the minimum amount of resources and the maximum amount of efficiency. Now, their odds of success are not so good, but if they do succeed, they make history. And they changed the game. What you figure out pretty quick in this place is that the only constants are change and adversity. You never know what to expect from day to day, other than it's going to be hard. We've got very little time to do a whole bunch of work. Small problems or small challenges become big problems in a very short time. You have a very limited amount of energy, and you can't afford to squander it on just surviving. If you're just surviving, failure isn't far behind. If you can't get up and shoulder a load day after day, you're marked as an inconsistent performer, and you don't get a chance to go on that final summit bid team, because people aren't going to want to place their bets on you. We've been working for 4 years. Who's it going to be in the end? The most consistent performer. It never feels like you got enough strength. It never feels like you've got enough resources, that you're rested well enough, that you've got the conditions you need, that you want to do what may well be the most difficult thing you've ever done in your life. And what's your choice? You go home or you stay the course. Thriving is not about working harder. It's not about carrying a heavier pack or working a longer day. It's about using what little you do have really well. When things get really difficult, I got this little mantra that goes like this: better is possible. And for me, that triggers optimism. I start getting creative. I start getting really innovative. I'm inspired to do that. I used to have this belief that the only useful personnel on these big expeditions that could justify taking up space and eating food were climbers. This woman, Jane Fearing, volunteered to serve as our base camp manager and cook for the 2 months that we were on this mountain, 2.5 months at this mountain. Now, I wasn't too sure about Jane, because I thought, why would anybody want to serve 12 prima donnas in this boring, thankless job? She volunteered. I was suspicious. She brought a sense of spirit, and she brought a sense of humor that put to shame any self-importance or kind of specialness that we may have assumed that we had, that made us different from one another. She made a huge difference in cultivating this all for one, one for all kind of culture that we had in our team. And she was on the radio every morning and every evening. She was the common voice. She was the home. I had no idea that she'd bring something like this to the team. And that's part of thriving. I believed that my chances of reaching the top of this mountain hinged on my willingness, not my ability. Ability isn't the issue here, but my willingness to bend and flex my perceptions always towards this goal of thriving and of being open to and recognizing opportunities and resources wrapped in very unfamiliar packaging. The biggest challenge for me in the next 4 days was to overcome these terms that I had in my own mind for how I was going to do this, how I was going to do the most difficult thing in my life, and that was I had to have the perfect setup, and I didn't. We were out of manpower. We were out of time. If we were on any other mountain today, we wouldn't be climbing in these kinds of conditions. We'd be out of here. It's not possible. It's not possible anymore. Let's turn around. Instead, he stands just below us in the brunt of the wind, and he sets his feet apart like so he's not going to get blown over, stabilizes himself, puts his hands on his hips like this, and he looks at me and nobody else, and he says, well, what are we waiting for? And I'm just too brain dead at this point in time to, with a quick comeback, so instead I stutter something out about Jim encouraging us to treat it like any other mountain, and before I can finish, he says, to hell, this is like any other mountain. This is Mount Everest. I didn't spend the last 4 years of my life trying to get here, and the last 2 months working my butt off to turn around now when I know I can still go on. He says, look at me. I'm worse than the lot of you, and I'm going on. And on he staggers without a rest. Well, what can you do when you're the lead team and he's the support team, but follow him? Our team, everyone that isn't climbing with us, they're all 10,000 feet below on the glacier, and they've divided themselves into 3 different viewing parties. And they're watching on. And each one of these parties has a radio, and they are bantering back and forth to one another. They are so excited. They think we're moving. And this is an astonishing perspective to me, because I'm up there and I've convinced myself that we're not getting anywhere. But they think we're moving, and they're climbing with us, and they're cheering us on. And let me tell you, it is amazing how slow you can be moving and still be convinced that it's progress. We became the only 2 people from any side of the mountain that entire season to reach the top of Mount Everest. I thought that this would have been an amazing moment. I had visualized for years what it was going to be like to reach the top of Mount Everest. I visualized and fantasized. It was so romantic. I imagined myself putting the national flag on the ice axe and waving it above my head in triumph and exultation, and having all these philosophical revelations and being in awe of the curving horizon. But here we are on the highest point on Earth, and the sun is setting. That's not what we're thinking. That's not what we're doing. You want to know what really happened? There we are. We're on our hands and knees. And we're looking at each other, panting. We've got our oxygen off because we're not using it all the time, right? We've got to make this last at least another 6 hours. We're panting, and we simultaneously say, let's tag the top and get the hell out of here. But when you're too spent to do what needs to be done, that's what a team is for. And everybody could see us reaching the highest point on the earth. And they were celebrating. It wasn't just Dwayne and I reaching the top of the mountain, it was the whole team. And what we were was just 2/13 of what had been an extraordinary